Hello, Econ students. This is Mrs. Politsky, and I have notes for Chapter 6, Section 2, The Price System at Work. So follow along. Here we go. We're going to talk a little bit about price and the adjustment process, and we're going to get into talking about things like surpluses and shortages, and we're going to play around with some equilibrium prices and kind of take a look at how that will impact like supply and demand curves. So anyway, taking a look here, Roman numeral one, the price adjustment process. This is the market model. What are the economic models used for? Well, for the most part, it's all about trying to analyze behavior and predict outcomes. That's really the whole key of it. Is it perfect? Not always, but it kind of gives us some ideas of what might happen. And that's the reason why those economic models are used. What is the equilibrium price? Well, equilibrium price is the price which the number of units produced equals the number of units sold. There is neither a surplus nor shortage as a product at this price. So in other words, it is like the perfect place of where supply and demand meet. And this is probably going to be the price that is going to be charged within the marketplace. So a surplus. What can be assumed about the price based on the size of a surplus? Well, the product's price will go down proportionately to the amount of the surplus. So depending on how much we have on hand will determine on how much we're going to have to lower our price to kind of meet the needs of the marketplace. If there is a small surplus, the price isn't going to move that much. If there's a large surplus, certainly there's going to have to be some significant movement in order to meet the demand. A shortage. This is what will happen to the price and quantities supplied in the next trading period as a result of a shortage. Well, shortage for the most part is that we don't have enough of a product in hand, and hence it kind of drives prices upwards. Both the price and the quantity supplied would increase in the next trading period. I know I have a shortage of, let's say, a product like toilet paper. That might give an incentive to the supplier to produce more, and hence there's going to be more available in the next trading period. But the price might also be reflected upon that. Price is probably going to go up because there is a huge demand for the product, hence the reason why we have a shortage in the first place. Equilibrium price. Remember, this is kind of where supply and demand meet on our curves. What tends to happen to the market once equilibrium price has been reached? Well, the market's been cleared, leaving neither a surplus or a shortage in the end of the trading period. Now, is our equilibrium price always going to stay at this price? Not necessarily. If you ever follow the price of fuel, you can go by a gas station one day, the price might be one item or one price, and then you go back a week later and the price has changed. And it all depends on what's available in the market as far as what kind of supply is on hand, and then it also depends on the demand. If there's a lot of people desiring fuel, that's probably going to push prices upwards. If there's not a lot of people desiring fuel, it's going to probably push price back, and that's going to determine where equilibrium price is going to be on a week-to-week basis. So with that, we're going to take a look at shortages and surpluses in the curve form. So if we take a look at this first set of curves here with supply and demand, we've got a surplus. Our equilibrium price is here, but when we talk about what is supplied and what is demanded, we have a lot of items supplied at a certain price, but not a lot of people demanding that at a high price. And hence, that's going to drive price downward, okay, until we get to that equilibrium. When we talk about a shortage, there obviously is a huge demand for a product, not a lot of product available. So let's say at $10, we have a lot of people demanding that product. there's not a lot of it available for sale, and hence that's going to drive the price upwards to $15. So that's kind of a rough example of that. So explaining and predicting prices, what factors are important in predicting changes in price? The change in supply, change in demand, or both. Okay, as well as elasticity. If price can swing or move very easily, or can supply move easily, that elasticity will have an impact on where the price is going to be set. But again, if there's a lot of people wanting a product, or if there's a lack of demand for a product, certainly that's going to have an impact. Change in supply. What is one of the main reasons for variation in agricultural supplies? A lot of that's weather. If there is a drought, obviously there's usually a shortage of certain goods, and that shortage, for the most part, has a tendency to drive the markets upwards. That's a reason why when there's sometimes years when there's been a lot of crop loss, sometimes the commodity markets for soybeans and corn will go upwards. So it's kind of sad to think that, a bad year for a farmer, meaning that they're not able to produce all the crops that they want, could actually financially be a good year, because it might drive the price upward. So if they have grain on hand in storage, they might be able to make a little bit more money. All right, change in demand. Why did the price of oil increase dramatically when demand increased in 2005 and 2006? And this is because both demand and supply are inelastic. And letter D, change in supply and demand. Why did the price of oil increase even more after hurricanes Katrina and Rita? And the reason for that is that anytime we have a hurricane, there could be some issues happening in the Gulf of Mexico, is when we talk about the supply chain for oil. And the hurricane's destruction caused a decrease in supply. And hence that decrease in supply pushed prices upwards after those hurricanes. Going on. Just a little review. If you kind of remember back to chapters 4 and 5, we talked a lot about supply and demand. Some reasons why your supply and demand curves would shift. When we talk about demand, it could be taste, it could be income, it could be prices of those complement or supplementary or substitute goods, the number of buyers, expectations about the future and the goods in the future. Your supply, as far as some things that can move that, it could be the cost of the inputs. That's the amount of money it's going to cost to produce a certain product. Government policies, the number of firms that are out there in the marketplace, the technology issues, natural disasters and weather, and any expectations about future prices. All of that can swing a demand curve one way or another. So we're going to take a look at some examples from your textbook, talking about the movement in the demand curves when we talk about spinach. And supposedly the news is that eating spinach improves your health, and hence that causes the demand for spinach to go up. So we have our original demand curve here, this lighter blue, and we got our supply curve. The equilibrium price is here. But as we hear that it's going to improve your life, there is a greater demand, hence the shifting of the demand curve. And the supply is about the same. That extra demand pushes our price upwards to a new equilibrium. And as you can see that. All right. When we talk about other factors, if I can move this, there we go. There's news that eating spinach can turn your skin green, and hence your demand decreases. What's going to happen is, with our original demand curve, it's going to move left, indicating a change in price. So our original equilibrium price is up here, and because people are afraid that their skin's going to turn green, the demand goes down, and hence we have a lower equilibrium price. All right. Some other things, and this is just kind of illustrating the shifting of demand and supply. But if we have a decrease in supply, this is our supply curve here. This is our decrease in our supply curve. What's going to happen is, demand doesn't change, but we've got a situation where the price is going to go upwards, and that would kind of illustrate that. If we look at example for number 2, we have an increase in supply. Our supply curve is going to move out towards the right. Demand stays the same, but what's going to end up happening is because there is an basically an increase here, we're going to have a change in equilibrium price. So we have more supply out there. That's going to push price downward, as you can see. In number 3, okay, we have an unchanging situation with supply. Our supply curve is remaining the same, but demand changes. We see an increase in demand. Our equilibrium price is here. Equilibrium, new one, goes upward because there is an increase in demand. Hence, it's pushing prices upward. When we look at 4, we have a supply curve that stays the same, but we have a decrease in demand that pushes our price downward into our new equilibrium. Looking at number 5, we have basically a decrease in our supply, and we have an increase in demand. And what's interesting is how that moves price again upward. So even though we've got some changes here, meaning that we don't have a lot of supply, but yet we got a lot of people wanting a product, price is still going to go up. In number 6, we have a situation where we have an increase in supply. Okay, so our supply curve is moving out towards the right, but we have a decrease in demand, and what's going to end up happening is it's going to push price downward. Number 7, we have a decrease of both supply and demand. So both curves are going to be moving to the left, and as a result, your price is going to, for the most part, remain roughly the same, which is really kind of amazing here. But the supply and demand obviously is going to be changing. And then in number 8, here we go. Again, we have a kind of an increase in supply and an increase in demand. That's going to push the curves a little bit towards the right. If you look again at your price isn't going to really be impacted that much. So hopefully that will help explain a few things. Anyway, in letter E, importance of elasticity. How does elasticity affect the size of the price change when supply or demand changes? And when both supply and demand are inelastic, change in price is relatively large. If either is elastic, then the price change is going to be relatively small. Prices in competitive markets. When is the price system most efficient? And that's when we are in a very competitive market, because for the most part, people will be looking for the bargains, and they're going to move around until they find the price that they're willing to pay, typically a lower price. What's the great advantage of a competitive market? It definitely helps with allocation of resources. Resources will have to be allocated a little differently if there's a competitive market out there. All right, so taking a look at our charts here, what you're going to be asked to do here is to be able to figure out which one is illustrating a shortage and which one is illustrating a surplus. And anytime that we've got downward pressure on a price, typically we have a surplus, meaning that we've got too much on hand and we've got to move price. And hence, if there's upward pressure on price, there's always a shortage. So hopefully that will help you understand maybe what's going on here with this. All right. Thank you very much.